Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the A.live podcast. This is season 2, episode 14, and I'm pumped, ladies and gentlemen, because this is nearing the end of season 2, and this is just an exciting time for life, for recovery, for just being alive. I just want to throw out a disclaimer before we get started that I am not an addiction or recovery specialist. I am not a professional. I am not a mental health expert. None of the above apply. All that I can say is I know how to stay clean one day at a time through this process of recovery that I'm in today. And I'm so eternally grateful for this next guest that I have for you guys today. I'm excited to talk to her and allow her to share her experience, strength, and hope through this platform, the A.live podcast. And I have no other words. Let's just get right into this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Suzi B. What's up, Suzi? How you doing?
Hey, how are you doing, Aaron?
I'm great. I want to thank you for doing this. It means a lot.
Well, thank you very much for asking me. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to point out the fact that it is raining like cats and dogs there, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely pouring. We've had a wonderful couple of nights of storming.
Really? So that's interesting because it doesn't seem down here in Maryland that we've gotten the type of weather that you guys got up there. It's just like an hour away or so. But you're in PA, right?
Yes, York.
Yes. Awesome. Represent. Yana. Or actually, no, we don't want to talk about that program of recovery. No specifics because we don't want to break traditions. And look at me. I'm already starting to do that. What is wrong with me? I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's a long time coming. We go way back, I think, to our youth, like pre-teenagers. And we've
met you when I was 12.
Yeah, we've been through all kinds of stuff together. Accidents, several accidents. I can remember a car accident, accident with we were playing a water fight, and yeah, I don't know how much you want to talk about today, but we're going to talk about recovery, that's for sure, and some exciting things that are going on in your life today. So I just want to get right to it. What's up? How did you find recovery? Talk about your experience in this process.
Well, I do want to say, yes, Aaron, you are the reason I have fake front teeth because of a neighborhood water battle.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I didn't even know that I knocked your teeth out at the time. It was years later that I saw you again. We started talking again, and you told me about that. Because when it happened, I think I tripped you with a hose. We were having a water battle, and you got up and you covered your mouth and you ran inside. And that's the last I saw you for a couple of years. I think you were pretty upset with me.
Maybe a wee bit.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about recovery. Let's get into this because I know talk about your addiction and how that unfolded. As much or as little as you want to share about it. I know I will just talk about very briefly that we did used to use together. A long couple years of using, and it just unfolded, and it was tragic. Like it was detrimental to the neighborhood we lived in. I mean, we were running around like little hellions,
Oh yeah. And I knew I was an addict well before that. So you want me to start at the beginning here?
Start at the beginning. Let's do it.
Okay. So I knew I was an addict well before I picked up. I was addicted to the lifestyle. I was addicted to the fast pace, I have what you want, so, I'm wanted on some level. I was stalked when I was little, and there wasn't any rhyme or reason for it. Our neighbors just stalked me and my siblings, and it created this level of powerlessness that I searched for anything that I could to fill. I remember when I was little, there's a couple things that stick out in my head because they made me who I am, and they created my path for me. I was playing ball in my front yard with my siblings, and the ball rolled into my neighbor's yard, and they had a restraining order against us. I was maybe about 6 years old, and I remember the neighbor coming out and starting to take pictures of my mom trying to get the ball back. And I stood in fear and I froze, and my brother ran, and all I knew was that I never wanted to feel that way again, and that I would look for anything that I could to fill that void, to make that false sense of power. So I jumped into the lifestyle, and I used the lifestyle well before I picked up a drug or anything else. And I started using, I guess, a year before we met, actually. I was 11 years old when I started smoking pot and doing meth and all kinds of shit. And it is crazy to see like how much I progressed with that, because I was in and out of jails, in and out of institutions at a young age. And I knew about recovery. I knew that there were groups of people that were like me, because my dad was in and out of different kinds of therapeutic programs. So when I had enough of the repercussions for a moment, I knew where to look for some help. I wasn't ready to stop using because I was still filling that void. I had created the shell around myself, and I was basically a sociopath. I was not the kind of person that you wanted to meet in a dark alley, and I was not the kind of person that you wanted to leave alone in your house. I would steal your shoes and your dog and run over your mailbox like I did to Aaron, and help you look for all those things too, and act like everything was fine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it just reminded me of just some things some just like craziness that we experienced together. Like I can remember in active addiction when we were both using, it didn't matter what substance. I remember both of us using just all kinds of different stuff through our active addiction. And I remember
Whatever we found.
Yeah, and I remember at one point in time, you know, I was driving like a Nissan Xterra, and you had this girlfriend at the time, and like you needed me to go pick her up or something, and she had been hit over the back of the head with a shovel, and like she was bleeding all over my car, and like that was just the insanity, you know, just some of the insanity that we lived through. And the reason that we met so young is because we grew up, we were neighbors with each other. You were a couple doors up the street, and I knew like, you know, you were into drugs and alcohol and like that. I guess at that time that we met is when I started to like raid my parents' liquor cabinet, you know. So
yes,
and it just got out of hand really quick. And I remember another guy that lived up the street from us, the opposite way, and I'm not going to mention any names, but you know, I used to get off the school bus with this guy, like, and we would either run to his house or come down to my house and hit up his liquor cabinet, his parents' liquor cabinet, my parents' liquor cabinet, and just get drunk after school. And there was just insanity. So the disease of addiction is progressive. Talk about the progression that you saw in your active addiction and how unmanageable it got. Qualify yourself, I guess they say.
So it puts that part like where it's normal to go pick somebody up that got hit in the face with a shovel. It's normal to go put myself in situations where people hold guns to my head, or where I'm involved in regular crime and I don't care. Like things that I didn't even realize I was in the middle of shit where it could go horribly wrong, or that it even was going horribly wrong and it just seemed normal to me. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I was in and out of jails and institutions. I thought that was normal. It's not normal to go in and out of jail. Like that's not, for me, that wasn't okay, but I thought it was, and I didn't care. I didn't care about the progression of starting to steal from the people that I loved, or starting to put the people that I loved in harm's way. And once again, that not caring about it was the big thing. I couldn't feel anything. Mm-hmm. And I did whatever I had to do to get the next one. And watching that within myself, like the level of insanity that was involved there, and just beating my head up against the wall, I finally started to see that there was a potential change. It was actually, so someone else that we know had broken up with me, and I was walking down to get my stuff from their house, and I never realized the specifics of this situation until much later, until talking to a higher power. But this significant other told me that I was too much of a junkie to be with, and what I saw him as was a disgusting junkie. And I was like, how can you say that to me? Mm-hmm. But I realized that started a process in my head that started to allow something to click, that somebody that I viewed was bottom of the barrel was calling me bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, and just mentioning that person that you're talking about, like there's a whole bunch of other people in that clique, that gang of people who used, and we used each other just to get the next fix. And like, for a while it was fun until we started turning our backs on each other and, stealing money just to get the next fix, or whatever it was that we did to each other to get over on the other person, just so that we could have the advantage for the day, and then the animosity built, and then people snitched on each other, and it was just this cesspool of backstabbing and unmanageability, and we wreaked havoc on the neighborhood that we grew up in, as much or as little as we care to admit. Looking back now is like really it's wild to think about.
That is crazy to think about, because it started with us smoking bongs of pot in your shed, and then it progressed to actual knives being at people's throats. Like, it took a group of friends, the addiction took a group of friends, and we wreaked havoc.
Yeah, it's quite an to think about it now. I mean, I haven't thought about it until now. Like, it didn't really ever occur to me until this moment that, just looking back, I can't imagine to go back to that now. And it's so crazy to, like, we can sit here and talk about all the crazy things that have happened in our addiction, but what I really want to get into is how our lives have turned around. Because there's one more thing I want to say. I can remember someone who wasn't an addict that used to drive us into the city, not even knowing that we were picking up heroin. I would leave the money in the back seat in a glove or something, and we'd drive you down there, you get out of the car, go get what you had to get, come back, put it in the glove. I would drive home, get the glove out of the backseat of the car, go about my using, and like this person had no idea that they were involved in a federal crime, and we put people at risk that didn't deserve to be there, and we did all these things, and we just we didn't care for anything except the next fix. And like, that's the kind of addict that I am, and you're reminding me of where I came from, and like to see where you are now, and to look in the mirror and see where I am now. It's just we've done 360s. We've come around. I mean, there's just so much from the past, but I wanna get to know Suzi right now. Who's Suzi now? Because it's been like 2 years really since I've really been able to have a conversation with you. You've lost a ton of weight. There's so much that has happened. So talk about what life is like now for you.
Well, it's amazing. It really is. So, a series of events, and my higher power allowed me to break through a shell of who I used to be, and an opportunity to be a new person, an opportunity to feel, which I found out the good, the bad, the indifferent, it's all everything that I want to feel. No matter what, I want to keep feeling. I've been through some shit. I have. But because of staying clean, and because of relying on a support group and doing everything that therapy programs have suggested of me, like what I have more than anything else, more than anything physical, is an ability to deal with problems, coping skills, and a toolbox to be able to deal with everything. I've had cancer come back, and I've been through that. I've lost the biggest part of my support group, and I got through these things clean because I allowed myself to feel, because I took suggestions, and I never thought that I would be able to do those things. And those, more than all the physical things that I have, are more important than anything else. But the coolest thing, honestly, is that, so when my cancer came back, they told me that the chances of me having a kid, I ended up having to have a partial hysterectomy and countless other surgeries. And they told me that by this year, by July, if it was not in place, if I was not pregnant, that we were going to do a full hysterectomy to remove all the cancer. And I've been, like I said, I've been through some shit. I've been through a divorce, a very, very bad divorce, which I'm transparent, and whatever you want to hear, I'm willing to share. But I didn't think it was going to happen. And the day after Christmas, I had been dizzy and sick for weeks, and I went to go get a blood test because I was like, let me just try here. And I spent $100 on pregnancy tests and got this blood test, and I'm having a baby. I'm 6.5 months pregnant. I found somebody
Wow.
who loves me and works a program.
That's amazing. I didn't know you were that far along. Congratulations, Suzi. I know this is a huge,
Thank you.
yeah, I'm grateful. Like, I know what it's like, you know, to have a child, and like, it's so amazing. It's so amazing. I'm so excited for you. And I think that's so awesome that you've found somebody to share that with who's also in recovery. I didn't know you were that far along. 6.5 months. How are you?
yeah.
How are you dealing with pregnancy through COVID-19 and recovery? I mean, how's the pregnancy been going?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm the person that goes. I have 20,000 commitments and 10 hats and everything. So what this did, and what my divorce did actually, was give me an opportunity last year to be okay with myself, to be alone with myself. And through that, and through the coping skills that I have, this COVID thing and the quarantine and everything has actually helped me in many more ways than it's hurt. It's allowed me to sit my ass down and take a rest. I feel like, I mean, I want to know what's normal. I want to talk to other people who had babies recently. I want to go through those things too, and that makes me sad sometimes.
Sure.
But then I think about the fact that with me running around and doing all this stuff, I'm in a high-risk pregnancy because of the cancer.
Okay.
But instead, I'm resting.
Well, that's great.
So,
That's great. Now, what's the living situation like? I know you said you're in New York. Is your boyfriend living with you? What are you guys doing to prepare?
yes. So he moved in with me at the end of last year, and I own my own home now. I
Awesome.
inherited it.
Wow.
And so we have a crib. So the baby will not be just strapped to the corner of the bed or something.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a starting point, right? So, I kind of getting the sense that something major happened at some point. You mentioned losing a major part of your support. What were you talking about there, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm transparent in any way. So any way you want to take this, I'm down. When through my active addiction, I went upstate to state prison that was a couple hours away. And every single week, my grandma, who was in her 60s at the time, drove all the way up there to come see me. When the entire world turned its back on me, because I asked it to for my actions, let me put that out there. She stood by me the whole time. She made sure that when there was a period of time where my father was out of the picture and my mom was kind of in a depressive state where she was in bed, and my grandma made sure I was fed, made sure I went to school. She always had my back from the get. And I watched her, when I was a couple years clean, get sick and slowly die. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell her that I was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell her that my mom was going to be okay. And I always said that that was one thing I would never get through clean. But I leaned on my support group. And I know I got to be able to see it from a different perspective, that my grandma got to meet me for 2 years. Not the stone cold bitch that would stab you in the back, but the person that would give you the shirt off her back. And that is the biggest gift of staying clean. One of the biggest gifts of staying clean that I have faced.
Yeah, but so it was a major, yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like she was a major part of your life, and it was a tragic thing to see her go, I'm sure, but sounds like it was very rewarding also to allow her to see who you really are, and see you grow in your process. So that's cool. And forgive me for asking. I don't want to go too deep.
No.
But
transparent.
Yeah. And that's the gifts of recovery, right?
Exactly.
So how do you stay in this process? I know that pretty lately on the podcast, I've been really diving deep into the steps with people, because I have, I'm interested in knowing the freedom that people are experiencing through step work. And I've only just begun to embark on my journey in step 3, with 2 years clean in a couple of months. And so I've had a ton of freedom. I've had a ton of gifts, but I know there's so much more on the other side of this step work. And I've been complacent. I've been, making excuses, but I've also been raising a baby girl. I moved to a new area trying to get plugged in there. And then the COVID-19 came crashing down and was like, sorry, no more going to meetings, no more building your network that you're just trying to build. So there's been a lot of changes in my recovery process, and I'm interested to know more about the step work. And I know all that takes is for me to crack the book open and start working on it with a sponsor. But in the meantime, I want people to share about their experience. So when did you start your step work? Where are you at in the process? What has it been like?
I started my clean date is August 20th of 2012. And I started right away when I came back to a therapeutic program. And I jumped right into it. So I moved through pretty quickly the first time, or quickly in some people's eyes, but for me, that was what I needed to do, because I was a jumbled mess and I needed to get through them, and then I needed to come back around. So I'm back on my 9th step right now. And I can tell you that the gifts of working the steps are, so the person that I was prior to picking up the step work was, I had so much anger, so much rage. And throughout the step work, I was a victim too, a victim from everything. It was the school that did it. It was you that did it. It was, it was everything.
I want to talk about that victim mentality for a minute. Victims don't recover is what I learned from the last episode of the podcast I was talking about with the guest I had on. And she said she played a victim for a very long time, and victims don't recover. And, I'm seeing that in other people as well. And I also see it in myself, where so-and-so did this to me, and that's why, I'm suffering today. Talk about that victim mentality. What is up with that?
So it allowed me to put myself in a mindset where I wasn't looking at myself and trying to better myself, when 9 times out of 10, I can find a solution out of the problem if I watch my own actions.
Right.
And So if I look at my own actions instead of someone else's, it could be as simple as maybe I shouldn't have been there at that time. Maybe it was me not understanding the situation or understanding that there's other perspectives.
Sure.
For whatever the case, like, it's things like that that bring me out of that victim mentality.
And that's such a good point that you made there. Like, it could be, it's the other perspectives that, like,
Yeah.
what part did I play in the role of this relationship falling apart, and I holding on to resentment from that, and it's all that person's fault. Well, so and so did this, or so and so made me feel like this. But if I stop and try to think about the perspective or my part in that situation, maybe there's just a little bit more that could be revealed and allow me to heal, right? So it's, at what point did you, experience that victim mentality and had the ability to let that go?
It started the first time I was working step 4.
Okay.
And we have to list, or I had to list basically a full inventory, the right, the wrong, the indifferent, and take a deeper look at it. And when I started to look at that, there were things that started to sit uneasy with me. Like, okay, well, maybe it starts to talk about resentments, and then in 5, 6, it starts to dive further in. But when it started talking about, it asked a question. Now, I've never utilized therapeutic literature until this time around, and there were some guideline pieces of literature that I used, a step working guide, and it asked me what my part in the situation was. And the biggest one, the one that stuck out to me that started clicking, was I had this whole thing about this school that kicked me out. And I was so angry about that. And I was so angry, actually, I was a victim of police brutality when I was 14.
Really?
And I was angry at the cop. But when it asked me what my part in it was, my part in it started well before the situation itself.
Okay.
And if I was actually able to look at the dominoes well before it fell, I shouldn't have associated myself with a certain group of people. And if I didn't do that, the rest of the dominoes may have not fallen.
Sure.
But it started doubt in my head.
Yeah. Huh. It's interesting. And like I said, more will be revealed. Like, this power of the step work seems to be so freeing, because you get a different perspective, right?
Yes.
You think, like, I guess the way I'm perceiving things now and the way I've been perceiving things since I got clean, that's all going to change, I think, when I get further along in the step work. I'm going to gain new perspective, and my higher power is really going to shine light on places that have been hiding in the shadows in my mind, I feel like. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. Like, I never imagined the amount of growth that would come through it, and I don't see it until I look back. What is that quote about?
In hindsight, it's like,
yes, it's 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. Yeah, you have a better look on things.
And it's so true. Like, the most evident things that I can see are my anger and my perspective with victim mentality and everything like that. But I can see it in everything. Whereas before, I wanted to be part of a group so bad, I'd allow things to go. I'd allow people to talk about other people or judge other people when that's not me. And I would be afraid to even stand up and say something. And through the evolution of step work, I got tired of that, and I would rather for no one to like me but me to like myself.
That's right.
And that became more important.
Yeah, I've had that experience. I've been able to stand up for myself now. I used to, like, and I still do. One of my character defects God's been shining a light on this one lately, is people pleasing. And I've gotten so much better with it, but I still fall back into those old ways a lot of the time. I want people to be happy with me. I'd rather people be happy with me and me be upset with myself because I allowed somebody to do something than me stand up and tell the person how it is and then be upset with me. And that doesn't make sense. I need to shift my perspective on that and learn how to do what's right for Aaron and Aaron's family, and stop allowing those negative people or the negative influences to come in. It's really a process. Having,
it's hard.
And you mentioned your clean date. You said August 12th, 2012. Is that
August 20th, 2012?
So you're coming up on 8 years.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 years. Seven and some change right now. Yeah, my girlfriend was asking me before we went live here is like how much clean time you had, and I think maybe 5 years, something like that. So man, I was off. Yeah, you really you stepped into this recovery thing, and I still used for a long time. And there was times I remember walking the dogs around the neighborhood, trying to get clean. I was in and out. I had periods of abstinence. There was times when I told you I was clean and you knew I wasn't, but I knew you knew better, but I told you anyways I was clean, and you were always there just to help me, lead by example, I should say. And I'm really grateful for that because it helped me get to where I am today, whether you choose to believe that or not. I'm looking at a 3-foot chain link of all my key tags, where it's right there in front of me. And it's a lot. It's longer than that. I just don't know where all the key tags are, and I put together what I could find, and it's probably 3 feet. And it's just a journey of indecisiveness, wishy-washiness, being on the fence, and looking back at that. I wish I would have just stuck with it, but I can't beat myself up. I have to give myself a break, right, as the cliche goes, and just, allow myself to be where I am. But there's times where I struggle. I struggled this week. I'm like, man, financially, I'm light years away from where I used to be, but I really want to I've been looking and playing with the idea of I want to get an SUV because I want a more safe car for my family when we go places together. Not that my car's not safe now, but having an SUV, just having a bigger
I'm not
car.
the one to talk to you about cars. I'll co-sign it.
Why do you say that?
Oh, because I love cars. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You absolutely need that. I mean,
yeah.
One of our friends is trying to talk me into getting a motorcycle. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And my significant other is like, no, you're pregnant. We're not doing that.
Yeah, probably not the best idea. And that's that's why we have network in this process to help guide us. When we think we have a good idea, it may not be the best idea. My best thinking got me here. It got me to, the darkest depths of my addiction. It's crazy. So we need people.
Let me let you know about my perspective with the clean tags, though.
Okay.
Because, I started in this journey. I started when I was 14 years old, and I'm 32 now.
Okay.
And I now have 8 years clean. And without those ins and outs, and without all the pieces that I picked up and all the seeds that I planted along the way, and not being ready, but finding different avenues, without all those things, there's no way I would be the person that I am today. I required them. I required all of those obstacles. I required all of those challenges. And I, too, had a long line of key tags until one day I decided that was my past and that was my journey that led me here and not who I am. And I gave it to another. But I mean, that's a big thing. That's your journey. Stand by that, because I do.
Yeah, it's funny, just kind of reminiscing on all of the memories that we've had since, through our lifetime together. And I think one of these that just came to mind right now as you were just talking is that night. I think it was April 26th. I can't remember the exact date. April 22nd, 2016 maybe. Whenever it was, whatever year it was, but it was that time that I overdosed, and my parents found me lips blue in the bathroom, wasn't breathing, and it was, in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden my mom just woke up out of the dead of her sleep because she says that God woke her up and told her that I was in trouble. And so I overdosed, and I was brought back to, is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's
Okay.
good. Just checking on the lightning, making sure we don't have a repeat.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it was like, my mom was woken up out of the dead of her sleep. She says that God woke her up and told her that I was in trouble. And, there happened to be a cop on our street that when she called for an ambulance, it was there within like 30 seconds. He had Narcan. They shot me up with Narcan 3 or 4 times until I came back. I remember coming back and being confused and naked in the bathroom and like leaning forward, and the cop just saying, here it comes. And with that, I was like projectile vomiting everywhere and gasping for air. And, I'm looking up, feeling just like so helpless, and hopeless, and seeing cops and ambulance and my parents like trembling with fear. And all I remember from there is that they took me out to the ambulance, and I could barely walk, and my head was just pounding so hard, it hurt so bad. And the cops just asking me, where's the drugs? Where's the rest of the drugs? And I couldn't remember anything. But then they took me to the hospital, and my dad rode in the back of the ambulance with me. And, I had no one at that point. I had no one except for the people that I had met in the process of recovery that I've been in and out of. If it wasn't for showing up to the program of recovery, relapsing, getting that white key tag, and talked about like getting those clean tags and going back for more research. If it wasn't for stopping by and catching a glimpse of recovery, you wouldn't have showed up to the hospital that night. You showed up. Izzy showed up. It's funny, both of you were on this season of the podcast because you guys were the only 2 people other than my family that showed up at the hospital that night. And it gave me that glimpse of hope. Like maybe I am loved. Maybe I have a chance. Maybe I'm here for a reason. And, something that you said just a couple minutes ago reminded me of that. So we have been through a lot, and it has been a lot of ups and downs, and I'm just so blown away by how far you've come, how far I've come.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. Are you still with the same home group, same sponsor?
Yes. When I was 2 years clean, I ended up changing sponsors, but I'm still with my sponsor now.
Awesome.
We're going on 6 years strong, and relationships take work, and so we work at it sometimes. But she has what I want, and so I keep coming back there.
Good.
Same home group. The home group.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was my home group when I first came around for like 2.5 years, and man, I can remember people in that home group just telling me, Aaron, you're going to die. Like, you're going to die. And sure enough, like, I came so close so many times. And by the grace of God, I'm here today, and I'm here to share my story and hopefully help somebody else. It's this program really is about giving it away to keep it.
And that's the thing, like, you went to the hospital on that overdose, but there wasn't a thought in my head, like, you show up for people. Mm-hmm. You like, hey, Aaron's like, maybe he's like me, maybe he's gonna come back. Like I just keep holding on because people did it with me and showed me that there was a way to survive through this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have to talk about the other side of things too, is like not everybody makes it. Not everybody makes it back. We know a few people that have lost their battle to this disease of addiction, and
Right.
I do believe it is a disease. What is your perspective on that? Because a lot of people will say, well, you had the choice. You had the choice to pick up. It's not the same as cancer. Now, coming from a person who has been diagnosed with cancer and who is a recovering addict, you're recovering from two things. Do you consider them both diseases?
Absolutely. And I think that there's symptoms with different diseases, and sometimes there's different symptoms for different people. But what I've witnessed within myself is that there's a compulsive nature there. And I've witnessed it with a family member, a compulsive nature. Now, he didn't pick up. He uses chronic exercise to the point where he's 35 years old and can wear my 00 pants when I was on meth. But what my symptom was that I used like any minor mood altering substance, but that compulsion is absolutely a disease. Like if you look by the textbook characteristics, in my eyes, that is what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does this program have to offer to somebody who doesn't know where to start? Like, what would you recommend? What is a good starting point? What was Suzi's starting point? I mean, how did you really even get your feet wet in this process?
So I stumbled into a meeting. At the time, like, internet wasn't a giant thing, but I searched for it. And there goes the lightning again.
Yeah, that was loud.
For it. Yeah, I searched for it online, and I found a meeting that was close by, and I walked in because the pain at that moment was great enough to walk in, not to do anything else, but to walk in.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because let me share my experience real quick with you. My experience being introduced to any type of 12-step recovery fellowship program, what have you, I was introduced to it fairly early. I would say I might have been 21 maybe. And I don't know if I think it was after the first time I went to rehab, and which, by the way, you don't have to go to rehab to get clean. I know plenty of people who have gotten clean in a 12-step fellowship. For me, though, I used rehab to get clean every time that it was like the kickstart that I needed for my recovery. I had to get the drugs out of me, and that's okay, And I also was on a lot of maintenance programs before I was able to put everything down too, and that's okay. If you're going to be on maintenance, be on maintenance. Don't, try not to use it forever. The ultimate goal is to be clean, but if it's helping you live a better life, then by all means, just keep coming back, That was my story. And so,
can I say something to that, Aaron?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It is that, like, when people get injured sometimes, when I had a bad injury and I couldn't walk, so I started off with a wheelchair, and then I moved to crutches, and then I moved to a cane, and then I was walking on my own, and they weren't meant to be long-term things, but they were meant to try and regain my muscle structure to recover from my injuries, and it was okay for me to do that.
Sure.
And I think that that's a big thing that I correlate with anything associated with that.
Like maintenance drugs. Yeah, that's such a good example, really. It's a good comparison. But like I was saying about the the experience I had with walking into a 12-step fellowship program of recovery is that I was scared. I was scared. I was a little boy, maybe 21, 22 years old. I think it was 2008. So that was like, what? Jeez, that was a long time ago. What, that's 12 years ago? I'm terrible with math. You would never know that I work with numbers, by the way.
It is. And that was during one of the dark parts of our addiction too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really the beginning of a long 10 years of intravenous drug use. And, overcoming so many different things since then it's just been crazy. Be here for a decade. I'd be here for a decade to tell you about it all, really. But we don't have that kind of time. And I remember being so scared going into this meeting the very first time. I asked my parents to come with me, and I had to like find my way there without them, because I wasn't gonna be okay sitting in a meeting with them. And I love them to death, but they're not gonna keep me clean.
Right.
It has to come from myself. So I had to eventually learn to let go of mom and dad's hand and walk in this process by myself, have my own experience with it. And it took me till I was 31 years old to move out of their house. So from 21 to 31, intravenous drug use in my parents' house. You can only imagine. It was freaking disaster. It was a nightmare. And to relieve them of that burden has been so rewarding, and they're getting older now, and I'm actually able to show up for them and be a son, and if they're watching, I know they're so proud of both of us, for being able to step over that threshold and get through the things we've gone through and the struggles and the internal, resistance we had against coming into recovery. But yeah, tell me something. Tell me more about your experience. I'm tired of hearing myself talk. I want to hear you talk about recovery.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I knew that when I came around this time, when I came back, that rehab is it's part of my story, but it's not how I got clean. I went there. I got clean in jail, actually, and I got clean after I had been to jail for a while. I used pretty much the whole way through it, and then there was a moment where something came through, and I was actually able to put the drugs down, and I detoxed with my bunkie shooting up. But I had made a decision that what I wanted more than anything else in this world was to be clean, and it was a journey from there. But I mean, I have to continuously work on my step work. I have to call my sponsor, and I have to go to meetings. And if I don't do those things, you said about character defects earlier. My biggest one is anger and being judgmental and being that victim, and it pops back up into my head. But like going through all the things that I have, you said about how I lost weight. So I have tried every year to pick something. Like for so long I had New Year's resolutions and I didn't fulfill them because I was too busy getting high and screwing people over. And so since I've been clean, I've tried to make different New Year's resolutions that were attainable. And one of them was a couple years ago to lose weight. I was starting to feel unhealthy, and I wanted to make adjustments that would be able to stay within my lifestyle. So I started eating better. I started eating less amounts. I started eating at different times, and I started exercising. And I lost over 100 pounds, and I've kept it off for over 2 years. And I can eat French fries or cake. I just can't eat the whole cake, and I can't eat the whole thing of French fries.
That's so crazy. Over 100 pounds. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. If that's not a testimony of the things that a recovering addict can accomplish, then I don't know what is.
We are strong, stubborn people, and like I don't normally use the term we, but it's evident within myself. It's evident within the people that I love.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that any recovering addict that I know can put their mind to, anything they want to put their mind to, they succeed in. And that's what I did with the weight loss. That's what I did with a lot of things.
Yeah, you said we're strong and stubborn, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I was actually thinking about it last night. Another thing that addicts are. Well, we're very resilient, so we bounce back fairly quickly. But that's not the thought I had last night. The thought I had was that we're very sensitive people.
Yeah.
I know me, I'm very sensitive. Someone can say something to me with no intention of being talking down on me, and I can feel like they just degraded me, or and it's just, I know other people like that in this process. But yeah, it's crazy. We're a lot of things, it's crazy. So I don't know.
It is. It definitely is. And like last night. So do you want to hear about my last night real quick?
Yeah, I know before we even started, you mentioned that you had past couple, like the last 24 hours have been difficult. What went on?
And honestly, like so we had this huge storm and power line went down, transformer blew, was struck by lightning, lit the backyards on fire.
Wow.
And I'm trying to get to the backyard to see how far up it is, if it's like actually touching the house, if we need to evacuate the animals. And I go to touch the fence. Now it's metal and I wasn't sure, it was pouring, so I used like one finger, and thank God I did, because I was electrocuted.
Oh my gosh.
And being 6.5 months pregnant, then the ambulance comes. We've been without power since then until about 20 minutes before this podcast, and I'm like, I can charge my phone.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So you lost power
the hospital
too?
Got checked out. Yeah.
Wow.
All day.
Well, so I know that my parents said, I talked to them this morning, they said they lost power too, and you're just a block away from them. So I wonder if you guys regained power at the same time,
Yeah, it definitely was interesting. But like sitting there last night after I was released from the hospital, we found a heartbeat. Everything is fine.
Good.
And I know that my higher power did not bring me this far to drop me down.
That's right.
So I knew that everything was going to be okay. But I went, and once I get home, sitting with myself, I'm okay with that. Like I said, like even in the quarantine today, one of the coolest things that I get to experience is the fact that I'm okay. The demons in inside my head are kept, like they're tame, they're at bay, and I can sit there without electronics and feel relief, actually.
Yeah.
And I can sit there and just have a conversation with my significant other, or sit with myself and be okay.
That's awesome. That is like the biggest gift that I've heard you share about tonight, is just being okay with self and being able to sit in silence and being okay with you. And that's amazing. There's times when I'm okay with myself, and there's times when I'm not feeling okay with myself. I tend to beat myself.
The roller coaster.
The roller coaster. That's right. There's time, like I'm so hard on myself. I think talked about that earlier, just like beating myself up for no reason. I allow other people to make, I take what someone else says to me and I twist it around and play the victim. And, so we touched on a lot of good things tonight. But really, we can overcome those things in recovery. We can get better with self, and we can learn that the role that we played may just in fact be the reason that the relationship that was, from the past that doesn't happen anymore wasn't their fault. It might have been our fault. We can admit our own wrongs and just get to a better place. I think that's been the biggest topic of today, is just the transformation, like the metamorphosis, turning from a caterpillar into a butterfly, spreading your wings and just being able to be free, right? The freedom that we experience in recovery. So that's truly a gift. I'm pumped for you, Suzi. What you got? 3 months left on this pregnancy, not even, right?
Oh, thank God. Thank God. It's been treacherous. And that's it. That's the other thing this program taught me, that pain is temporary. And this is a difficult, high risk, pain every day pregnancy. But physical pain is temporary, and the emotional stuff that's coming out of this is not pain. So I can handle this, and I can get through this
That's
for
right.
the reward.
Yeah, be strong. You know, there's so many rewards of having a child. I mean, I can't even begin, and my little one's only a little over a year old, you know. So there's so much more to come. So much more to come. I mean, just today I actually took half a day today because the daycare provider that watches Paisley during the day, she called me and was like, you know, a transformer blew, ironically, in her neighborhood, and she lost power. I needed to come pick up my daughter, and so I was able to leave work, and I was just grateful to just be able to spend that extra time with my daughter. And we sat out on the back porch, and I filled up her little kiddie pool and watched her splash around in it, and it was nice, you know. So there's just so many gifts, and like I was just, you know, laying there watching her, and I was like, man, I created this. I created this little thing, you know. She's so adorable, and I just love her to death. So, did you find out the gender yet? Did you have the gender reveal?
It's a boy, and
It
we
is
have
a
a
boy.
name.
Okay, what's the name?
Well, let me tell you this quick. So I read this post-apocalyptic book, like, when I was in jail, and it was about this kid, and he ended up saving, like, basically the human race, teaching him to farm, saving him and everything. Post-apocalyptic book. Post-apocalyptic hero. His name's Dune.
Dune?
So I didn't mean for this. Yep, Dune.
Can you spell it? Is it like D-U-N-E?
D-O-O-N.
D-O-O-N. Okay. Huh. That's unique. That's super unique. I've never heard it. That's cool.
Post-apocalyptic hero. Come on.
It feels like an apocalypse. I mean, this whole coronavirus thing has felt like an apocalypse in a way, you know, being so, especially in the very beginning, being so uncertain of everything. How have you been able to, you know, deal with that? I know that you said it's been helping you a lot to just sit with self, right? And learn how to be okay with yourself. And I think a lot of people are having that experience. But what have you been doing to supplement your recovery since meetings are closed? And you're not supposed to see people, right?
One thing I did is, so I worked straight off the bat, had to go to meetings while doing all these other things. So I found out 8 years ago about Zoom meetings, and I started doing them on a regular basis about 6 years ago.
Really?
So it's like a online platform. So we started using them in our area. I jumped up. I tried to make sure like I had a meeting list out there so that people knew I was answering questions, like just trying to give my knowledge to anyone who needed it, because like now I do only Zoom meetings. But yeah, so Zoom meetings.
Yeah. It's been super helpful for a lot of people. I know for myself, personally speaking, you know, this podcast has been more helpful for me than the Zoom meetings. And when we were talking about, but I've done a bunch of Zoom meetings. You know, I do at least 1 to 2 Zoom meetings a week, if I'm being honest. One meeting a week.
That works.
No, but I at least hit my home group or my sponsorship family meeting, and they're both on the same night at the same time. So I try to rotate back and forth, and then I try to hit one more on top of that. But doing this podcast 2 times a week supplements that, you know, and it allows me to connect with another recovering addict. And I'm so excited to really, I'm excited for this season to be over, Suzi, and let me tell you why. I want to watch and listen back to all these podcasts, because hindsight is 20/20, right? And when we're living in the moment and we're talking right now, I may not always hear everything that the other person has to say, because I'm in my head thinking about, well, what am I going to talk about with them next, you know, and like constantly thinking, and that's something that has gotten easier over time, but I'm anxious to really just go on road trip, take a vacation, and just listen on the road to some of these podcasts and hear about my growth in this since episode 1 of season 2, and hear other people's perspective on recovery, and just take that collective information and apply it to my recovery. And and hear the growth. Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
I'm so proud of you. I really
Thanks.
am.
Yeah, it's been an amazing process, and I've been through a lot of hard things since I got here. I don't know if I told you, but I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. Towards the end of my road, I was able to, get the medication. Oh yeah, you went to one of the doctor's appointments with me.
I went with treatment for you.
Yeah, you vouched for me when the doctor asked me if I've been clean for 6 months. At that point, I had been, and it was like 5.5. Anyway, I think you vouched for me, and I got approved for the medication. That was like, yeah, I think that was like right before I moved down here or something like that. And then I started taking it when I got out of treatment. Last time I got my blood tested for it, it was not in my system, and super grateful for that. I just being a productive member of society is wild. What are you doing for work now?
Well, I work for the hospital, but I work from home.
Okay.
My higher power had a way with me there because I got sent home to work from an at-home station in December, right before all this.
Wow.
So otherwise I would have been right at the hospital, all high risk.
Yeah, as if
everything.
As if it's not high risk enough. Right.
Yeah. And I'm an imaging specialist, so I do scheduling, some things associated with billing and coding and
that's crazy.
And stuff like that.
I remember when we used to work at the restaurant together.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, I know, I worked in food a lot in my life. I know you had that same experience, and to see you working at a hospital right now, being an imaging specialist, and I'm, working with money and finance, it's just bizarre. It's bizarre.
Who are we? What happened here?
Right. What happened? That's so crazy. So crazy. Well, anyway, Suzi, we're about out of time. I really appreciate it. It's great to catch up. Good to hear from you and see that you're doing so well with your life. And these are just a portion of the gifts of recovery that we were able to talk about today. There's so much more. There's so much more to offer. This program has so much for you. So if you're struggling, reach out. If you like what you heard today, hit that subscribe button. Please you don't have to use ever again. Just reach out for help. You can reach out to me through my A.live Panda page. You can reach out to Suzi. There's so many resources that we have, and it's a shame when another addict just loses their battle with this disease. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. This is the one disease that I know of that you can talk away. You can talk it away, and you can overcome it. So there's a better way, and that's the message. The message really is that any addict can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. So we hope that you guys make it to that across that threshold like Suzi and I got to. And if you're in recovery, thanks for tuning in. Keep doing what you're doing, man, and being that shining light of an example to the next addict who needs to see, because what works for you might not work for me. And so there's always somebody that's going to connect with you on a level that they can't connect with me on. So I hope I'm making sense. Anyway, we love you guys. Suzi, I love you. I'm so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. And don't hang up. I want to talk to you more after this message. Just hang tight for just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to mention real quick, June the 7th, which is this Sunday, 11 a.m. Make sure you tune in because it's the season finale, and I have a special guest. I haven't dropped the name yet. But you know it's the season finale, so it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to top Suzi, but it's going to be good. Right? So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check that out on June the 7th, this Sunday. Peace.
Subscribe now at A.live Panda on YouTube.